Hello, this is Senator Barack Obama, and today is Thursday, June 22nd, 2006. This week we are having an ongoing debate about the war in Iraq and what our approach should be. Some of you, I'm sure, are aware of the fact that back in October of 2002, when I was still preparing to run for the United States Senate, I delivered a speech opposing the war in Iraq. I said at that time Saddam Hussein was a ruthless man, but that he posed no imminent and direct threat to the United States. I said that a war in Iraq would take our focus away from our efforts to defeat al-Qaeda. I said that with the volatile mix of ethnic groups and complicated history, the invasion and occupation of Iraq would require an occupation of undetermined length at undetermined cost with undetermined consequences. In short, I felt that the decision unfolding then to invade Iraq was being made without a clear rationale based on ideology and politics and not fact and reason. Now, it is with no great pleasure that I recall this now. Too many young men and women have been killed, wounded. Too many hearts have been broken. I wish that I had been wrong about this war and that my concerns had been unfounded. The question that all of us have been struggling with is what to do about it now. There are two Democratic proposals on the floor this week that have been debated. One amendment drafted by Senator Carl Levin of Michigan, who's the Democratic ranking member on the Armed Services Committee, calls for a phased withdrawal to begin this year. Another amendment, sponsored by Senator Kerry, also calls for a withdrawal, but places a specific timetable. He says that in a year's time, we would have to have all our troops out, except for those that were there to fight insurgency or to provide training to Iraqis or to provide logistical support. These two amendments represent different tactical approaches that exist within the Democratic Party, despite the fact that we share an objective, and that is to get our troops home as quickly as possible. I am not going to be supporting the Kerry Amendment, though. I'm going to be instead a co-sponsor of the Levin Amendment for this reason. A hard and fast, arbitrary deadline for withdrawal offers our commanders in the field and our diplomats in the region insufficient flexibility to implement a strategy that would leave behind a stable Iraq, give ethnic factions within Iraq the space they need to forge a political settlement, and prevent a possible meltdown in the region that would have enormous national security ramifications for us over the long term. Let me give you an example. Let's say that a year from now, we in fact have begun a phased withdrawal from the current levels of approximately 130,000 troops. We've actually drawn it down to 50,000 troops. And let's assume that it's agreed that at least 20,000 of those troops are needed for the work that Senator Kerry and Feingold and Murtha agrees needs to be done, providing training and logistical support to the Iraqis. If our generals in the field, in consultation with our diplomats and the Iraqi government, make a determination that it would make a big difference if we had 50,000 troops there instead of 30,000, or that we should keep more troops there for an extra 3 or 6 months to produce an optimal outcome. Any congressional edict that set forth a time-specific withdrawal date would potentially prevent us from pursuing this optimal policy. I don't think it's appropriate for Congress to make those decisions about what happens in the field. I think we have not only an interest in making sure that Iraq is at least stable, we also have an interest in making sure that our commanders can make the best possible decisions with respect to what is going to keep our troops safe and secure in the battle zone. Now, despite the fact that there have been some differences within the Democratic Party, there is unity at this point that we need to bring our troops home as quickly as possible, and that the Bush administration's simple-minded refrains of "we know best" and "stay the course" are simply not acceptable. It is not acceptable to conduct a war where our goals and our strategies drift aimlessly, regardless of the costs in lives and dollars spent. And that is where the Democrats are absolutely unified, that this administration has not only poorly conceived this war, but also poorly managed this war, which is why it has been so poorly received by the American people. So to sum up, we need to exit Iraq, but not in a way that leaves a security problem for us to clean up in the future. We didn't think this thing through going in. We should think this thing through coming out. In other words, as frustrated as I am by this entire war, as strongly as I oppose the administration's policies, I also think we have both a moral and national security reason to manage our exit in the most responsible way possible and to prevent potential bloodshed or collapse in the region. I understand there are going to be some folks who are frustrated with me about this, who want me to support a timetable for firm withdrawal. I am sympathetic to you. There are no easy answers to this war. The chaos, the violence, the horrors that we're seeing on TV and reading in the newspapers are gut-wrenching reminders of what our men and women in uniform, some just months out of high school, have to confront on a daily basis. Our troops are doing heroic work. They are doing it selflessly. They are doing it at enormous risk. They are doing it with unbelievable morale and discipline. And 2,500 of them have now made the ultimate sacrifice in this effort. I don't want them to be in harm's way a day longer than they have to be. And I'll be working as hard as I can to make sure that we are moving as expeditiously as possible to bring them back home. But more than that, I'm going to be working as hard as I possibly can to make sure that the United States government doesn't make these kinds of mistakes again in the future. All right. Thanks for listening, guys. I will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.